Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It has been almost 2 months since I uploaded to YouTube, and that is too long. I think it's like the longest sabbatical I've ever taken from posting on YouTube. And the reason for that is because we all thought that TikTok was just going to be gone and I was going to start dedicating more time to posting on YouTube, but that really didn't happen. Life got really busy. I got a new job. It's part-time, but it still consumes a lot of my time, and then some other stuff's going on that just takes up so much of my time. But I am finally getting around to filming my reading wrap-up for 2024. 2024 was probably my worst reading year books wise, and then also the amount of books that I read was honestly kind of underwhelming. I did have a lot of really favorite books, so this time around I decided to kind of break it into categories of my favorite books, least favorite books, and just some random books that I read that even though I liked them, they didn't really make much of an impression on me. So let's get started, because there are 54 books, even though I just counted the list and I feel like I'm missing a book, and some of them I can't even find right now. So just be patient with me. We're gonna get through all the books that I have in front of me and the ones that I read on my Kindle. I don't think I used my Kindle that much in 2024, surprisingly, even though 2025 I've already been using it so freaking much. But let's get started. I kind of want to get started with my favorite books of the year, because we should start on a good note. Okay, so I did have a lot of really good books that I read. Surprisingly, the list is actually pretty big. So starting with Heartless Hunter, this is a book that kind of took me by surprise. This is by Kristen Ciccarelli. So I read this book, I want to say in the middle of the year, and this is a romantasy book, but the world building is actually super cool. It's about this witch in a world where witches are being hunted by some witch hunter tribe of people, and then there is a little bit, or actually a lot, of enemies to lovers in this, because she falls for the guy who is hunting her essentially, and the other way around. And we have a really good hunt here. The banter is incredible, the tension, it's great. And then also the second book, which is called Rebel Witch, I actually got the advanced reader's copy for that one. That one doesn't come out until next month, and I read that literally during the summer, so I've had the art for that book for such a long time, and I got to read that too. And that one is also one of my favorite books of the year. I'm gonna put the cover over here. It was actually insane. I don't want to give any spoilers because the book is not even out yet, but 5 stars. You need to read this. It's also really fast-paced, and for a fantasy book, it's so short. We have so many books to get through, and I'm already tired, and I've only talked about one book. And I read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. This book has been on my shelf for so long. I'm pretty sure that I bought this book when it first came out, and I never was really interested to read it. This book is about a girl who makes a deal with the dark god, and she essentially lives forever. She's immortal, and this takes place in alternating timelines between present day time and old-timey France. You go back and forth, so we go through the 70s, the 80s, we go through way before the 1900s. This book, it's amazing. I want to say this is just a fiction book, even though there's a little bit of romance in this. Now this book is really heavy, but you go through it so fast. Don't expect a lot of action necessarily, but it is probably one of the most quotable books I've ever read, and it's one of those books that I read once and I have not stopped thinking about. So I'm gonna recommend this one. I read at this was the very last book that I read in 2024, which is Just Last Night by Mary McFarlane. I do have to say that this book was ending 2024 in a really good note. This is also more like women's fiction with a hint of romance. So in this book, you have this group of friends who had been very close for such a long time, and typically in a group of friends like that, there's a lot of a messy romance that goes on. So she's been in love with this guy since they pretty much were teenagers, and then one of their friends passes away, and you kind of have her journey going through essentially the grief process and everything that she kind of finds out that her friend never told her, and a lot of secrets. And the romance in this book is so, I don't want to say underwhelming, it's so miniature, but it's also one of the best romances I've ever read, so I definitely recommend. I'm pretty sure she might be an Irish author, and her writing is top-notch. My favorite books was The Love of My Afterlife, If You Like the Show The Good Place, and this movie called It's this movie with Reese Witherspoon and Mark Ruffalo from the early 2000s. I can't think of the name of it right now, but if you like both of those things, you're gonna really like this. She essentially dies and then she goes to heaven and she makes a deal to come back and like fix her life. And a lot of things go wrong in that process because she thinks she is supposed to make this one guy fall in love with her so she can stay, but that doesn't really happen, and like things just kind of get super messy. But this was I'm pretty sure I gave this book a 5-star. This was great, honestly. I definitely recommend this one, and it's so funny. It's a very weird one of my favorite fantasies of last year. This is An Ember in the Ashes by Sava Tahir. This is about it's kind of giving Star Wars, honestly. It's about the Empire and then the Resistance, and she is the daughter of the Resistance leaders, and they can't say that word on YouTube. Then she has a brother still who gets taken by the Empire and she really wants to rescue him. So then she goes undercover as a slave to work for the Empire. And then she kind of has a very anime Silver-esque situation with the son of the woman who rules the Empire. This book is like, the world building is probably one of the most rich fantasy world buildings that I've ever read. So for that reason, I do really recommend. Don't go into this expecting a really heavy romantasy plot because you won't be getting that. But this was 5 stars. It's a great fantasy book. I really want to get back into the series, but it's been, I don't know, it's been a long time since I was able to go back into it, and I haven't really been reading a lot of fantasies. So once I get back into it, I'm pretty sure the second one is probably going to be a 5 stars. Then I read Divergent. I know I'm like 12 years late to this. This was supposed to be part of a series that I never got around to filming. I kind of went back and tried to do it again this year, where I was going to read essentially what if BookTok took place in the early 2000s and read a lot of books that took place years ago that everyone was obsessed with before we even had BookTok. I don't think I have to explain what Divergent is about. I'm pretty sure you know by now. This is just a dystopian book. Gave it 5 stars. Honestly incredible. Can't believe so long to read this. That I just randomly stumbled upon in Target, and I had no expectations. I just read the description behind this and I really got captivated by it, and then I started reading it and this was like 5 stars. It's kind of giving Meredith and Derek in Grey's Anatomy-ish. Not really. But her husband dies and then she's trying to go through the grief process, and she does have a kid, so she's trying to find herself post, you know, her husband passing away and all the grief. And there is romance in this. It's just very undercover, but this is a very quotable book, and it's also very witty because she's also trying to essentially navigate motherhood by herself. So great book by Emma Gray. She has a new book out that I also have not read, but I've never heard anyone talk about this book, and this was a 5 star. I went through this very quick. Probably my favorite book of the year was Into the Dark Magnolia Parks. In this book, we essentially say goodbye to Magnolia and BJ. Their story just kind of wraps up. It's a very long book. This is the UK edition that I do own both of them because I love the series, and honestly, what can I say about a series that I haven't already said? This is probably my favorite series of all time. Jessa Hastings is a freaking genius, and I will continue to read everything she writes, even if it's just her grocery list. I'm pretty sure she has a book coming out in a few months, and I'm still begging for an arc of that book, but great book. I'm pretty sure I continue keeping the Boys to Tubman series this year, last year. Keeping 13 by Crowley Walsh. This is the second book in this series. I actually like this one more than I like all the Joey and Evie books. Am I saying that right? I don't think so. It's an Irish name. I can't pronounce that. I'm sorry. But this one's actually really good because it's a continuation of the series. It's book number 2. And they finally sort of get together in this book. So Joey and Johnny. Why did I say Joey? Johnny and Shannon's second book. Very good. I gave this like a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It wasn't a 5 star. But I do think about this book often. So I kind of decided to include it in that list. I think it's only fair. Then this is very, I want to say unpopular opinion. I did really like Taming 7 by Chloe Walsh. It was not a 5 stars for me, but I did really like it. I know it got a lot of hate. I would have loved for this book to be a lot lengthier than it was. Apparently when the editing process was going, she was going through the editing process for this book, the publisher made her cut off a lot of the book, and I wish we could read a lot of that because we didn't get to see a lot of Gypsy and Claire in this book, and I feel like Claire's character got a lot more whiny in this book. For that reason, I didn't really give it 5 stars. We do find out that something super sad happens to Gypsy, and that's why he has all like dark humor situation that he has going on throughout the series. I highly recommend getting up to this book though, because even though it wasn't everyone's favorite, you do get to see a lot more of Gypsy and Claire in this one. And then you also get a lot of introduction to the characters that we're going to be reading about in the rest of the series. I highly recommend, even though it's not a crowd favorite, that's for sure. It's almost like a honestly religious thing right now. I reread Magnolia Parks every single year, and I just keep coming back to it because it's just such a great book. 5 stars. I finished the Fight the Night series by Bridget Kemmerer. This is the last book in the trilogy, and I gave this one 5 stars. This one, it's about this kingdom that's essentially collapsing because there's this disease that is really separating people, and nobody knows where it's coming from. We do get a lot of closure in this book, and I loved it. Surprisingly, I actually really liked this one. And yeah, don't really have a lot to say about that. I read Betting on You by Lynn Painter. This one was so cute and fun because I've never read about characters who actually wear glasses throughout like the entire book. And this is a young adult book. It reads very young, but not like too young, but to the point where it's like super annoying. Lynn Painter's young adult books will forever be my favorite, and this one, it's about Charlie and what is her name? Bailey. Charlie and Bailey, they meet when they're flying to see their divorced parents, and he comes out very strong in the book, but then they essentially have like this fake dating situation so Charlie can piss off, not Charlie, Bailey can kind of piss off her parents because she's dating this like bad boy type of guy. And their romance is actually super cute, and we did get to see a little bit of a glimpse into Better in the Movies characters in this one. So yeah, I really like this one. The Paradise Program by Christina Lauren. I have not read at this point, I don't think, a Christina Lauren book since I read Love and Other Wars that I actually enjoyed. This one is super funny. She essentially has to fake date or pretend to be the wife of this guy who is really wealthy, and then they go to this wedding, and there's so much like rich people drama. This one was so fun, and it kind of takes place in a summery setting. It really reminds me of The Young Honeymooners. So if you didn't read that, that's kind of one of the OG Christina Lauren's books that everyone's read, so I highly recommend. Then I reread Gracie The Great Undoing Daisy Heights. Don't really have a lot to say about this because it's a reread. It was 5 stars. Also read Heir of Fire and Queen of Shadows. This is part of the Throne of Glass series. I don't know where Heir of Fire is, if I'm totally honest with you. I can't seem to localize a lot of my books right now, but I read this one, I read Heir of Fire, and both of them are honestly pretty good. I do have to say that Heir of Fire was a lot better than Queen of Shadows, but I really like this one. Probably will not be continuing. I don't know if I'm going to be reading a lot of Throne of Glass this year, but maybe we'll get around to it. But I don't think this is my favorite Sarah J Maas series, if I'm totally honest with you, and I don't think Sarah J Maas is my favorite fantasy author. I know that's really a hot take, an unpopular opinion, but I still really enjoyed it, and I'll be continuing this one. I gave this one like 4 stars. I'm pretty sure this was 4 stars, and this was also 4 stars, and this was also 4 stars. I think I forgot to say the rating for all of those. I actually technically forgot to talk about a book that I read on my Kindle that I don't own the physical copy of, and this was such a surprise. It's called Collided by Mary. I'm gonna put the cover over here. I actually got in touch with this author because she's a very small author. This was her debut novel, the first one that actually got published, and I read this on my Kindle. I'm pretty sure this is on Kindle Unlimited. If you like Johnny and Shannon from the Keep Me 13 series, you really have to read this, because even though it's not like specifically the same type of drama, their characters' personalities are so similar. So she ends up like kind of having a crush on this like bad boy guy, and he's actually, there's a lot of quotes about people who love reading books because she does love reading so much, and she's like reading the Harry Potter series throughout the book, and it's so funny. It's a very quotable book. There's a lot of drama in it, but it's like young adult drama that's like so fast-paced and so entertaining. I really fell in love with these characters because they're just so unique and just really gives young adult through and through, but in such a good way. I honestly didn't really think I would like a book like this as much as I did, but I loved it. I gave it 5 stars, and I'm actually already signed up to get access to the arc of the second book, because this book ends in a cliffhanger and you really just want to read the next one very soon. So yeah, that's the last, I think, 5-star read from my favorite books. Now on to books that, it's not that I didn't like these books, I did enjoy them. Some of them might even be 4 stars. They were just not my favorite books of the year. They're just kind of there. I liked a lot of them, I enjoyed a lot of them, but they were not like super memorable. I have not really thought about these books a lot. And then after that, we're gonna be going through my least favorite books. Let's see. Actually, I'm doing this all wrong, guys. There's another arc. Oh, how can I forget? I don't own the physical copy for this book, but I actually did get an arc of Nothing Like the Movies by Lynn Painter, and this was obviously one of my favorite books. This was a sequel to Better Than the Movies, and I just absolutely love to see a glimpse of characters from Better Than the Movies when they're in college, because their character growth is actually, it's honestly one of the best sequels that I've ever read, and I really enjoyed that one. Now on to, we can finally move on to just other books that I've read. Let's see here. Okay, this Funny Story by Emily Henry. This one is definitely a hot take. I was not a huge fan of this book. I liked it while I was reading it. I think like the hype of waiting for a new Emily Henry book really definitely, I don't know, influenced my rating, because when I first read it, I gave this book 4 stars, but then now thinking back on it, this is more of a 3.5 out of 5 stars. This one, let's just say, okay, the guy wears Crocs, okay? I feel like, and she describes him as like scruffy. If you want us to picture this guy as someone you're gonna like, maybe don't describe him like that. Honestly, I was thinking about Nick Miller from New Girl when I was reading this book. That's like exactly what I was picturing through and through, and I don't know, I just really didn't like the romance as much. So essentially, she gets dumped by her fiance, and then her fiance ends up marrying this girl who used to date this other guy. Okay, I'm saying this all wrong. Her fiance dumps her for his best friend. So he has a best friend throughout the book, and I guess they just end up deciding that they fell in love and all that. So she moves in with the guy who used to date this girl. That is really confusing, I know it, but if you read this book, you definitely get what I'm trying to explain. And then she essentially moves to this area of, I want to say it's Michigan, and she ends up working as a children's librarian, and she ends up falling in love with the area. And honestly, it's very, Emily Henry has a way with words, and like you do get to really travel to this place that she's talking about. So yeah, I just didn't like it as much as I like Beach Read. It's probably not fair that I compare every single one of her books to Beach Read, but I have to, because that's like her best book in my opinion. So yeah, this one was 3.5 out of 5 stars. I'm sorry, I just didn't really love it. Got to read another Ali Hazelwood book. I actually got all my Ali Hazelwood books signed by her because I did get to meet her. This one was also, I want to say, around 3.5 stars. Honestly, if you read The Love Hypothesis there in my shelf, you probably, all of her books are very similar, and to kind of make a cameo in this book, the Love Hypothesis characters. So that was probably my only favorite thing about this book, so it was a little underwhelming. Then she tried to essentially write young adult, and I can't say I was a fan of that. I don't think she should be writing young adult books. I didn't really like this book. It's kind of like an enemies to lovers book. If you like enemies to lovers, you might like this, and if you like chess, that's like honestly the only thing about this book that I kind of like, is I do like chess, and it was kind of fun to see like a chess competition and stuff like that. Pretty underwhelming. This was like a 3 star for me. I actually did really like The Dixon Rule by Elle Kennedy, and I gave this one 4 stars. It's about Diana, Dixon, and Shane. He's kind of supposed to be a little bit of a player, and she really can't stand him, but then they end up living in the exact same building. And it's so funny because there's like a lot of neighborhood drama and like apartment complex drama where they have these meetings and they just kind of go at it. It's honestly a pretty funny book. I don't want to say there's a lot of depth in this book, even though there are some topics towards the end, but yeah, it was entertaining. I did enjoy it. Powerful by Lauren Roberts. This was just it was a novella. It was so short. I kind of hate that this looks like a children's book. This one talks about the best friend Adina. I'm gonna be totally honest with you, I didn't remember who that was when I picked up this book, and that maybe really influenced my rating of this book. I gave it 3 stars. Honestly, it wasn't that bad, but it was not very memorable. Forgot about it pretty quick. Elle Kennedy writes another book this year. This is Girl Abroad, and this is about this 19-year-old who moves to London to essentially kind of escape her very overprotective father. He used to be like a rock star or something, like in the 80s. Moves to this flat in London, and when she gets there she expects to see girl roommates because the names of the guys are like very androgynous, like they're not really necessarily boy names. So she thinks she's gonna be moving in with girls, and when she gets there it's just she has like 3 roommates. And there's a love triangle that I really enjoyed in this book, so it was actually pretty fun. Then I read The Ex-Vows by Jessica Joyce. This one is about this like winery. They are actually having to plan the wedding of their best friends, and they used to be a couple way back in the day. This was actually really fun. I gave it 4 stars. I still have a lot of books to get through, so I think I'm just going to be telling you if I think you should read these books, and I'm gonna say a yes or no, and I'm gonna describe the book in like 1 or 2 words so we can get through it because there's still a lot of books. Daydream by Hannah Grace. Yes, I really like this book. If you like reading about people who love books, I think you really like this. And if you like a hockey romance, this was a yes for me. Bad Blood by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This series ended on a very underwhelming note. I feel like she should have probably ended up with the guy she didn't end up with. Typical Jennifer Lynn Barnes love triangle failed for me. This was a 3-star for me. Saving 6 by Chloe Walsh. This was a 4-star for me. I did really like the characters in this book, but I really have not thought about this book since I've read it, so there's that. In 6, same series, Boys of Toman. This is about Joy and Aofi. I also gave this, I think, a 4-star. I ended up rereading The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. That's all I have to say about that. I'm not really gonna give you a rating. This is a sequel for If Only He Had Been With Me. This was a little underwhelming of a sequel. I don't think we really needed a sequel for this book. This was a 3-star for me. Then I read a thriller called Look a Woman Missing by Mary Kovica. This was, honestly, the plot twist was shocking, but it was a very messy plot. Like at the very end of the book you kind of question how they even got there to begin with. So yeah, and honestly it's not just one person who goes missing, it's like 3, so the title is very misleading. Then we have Defended Dawn by Bridget Kemmer. This was a book in the Defy the Night series. Not my favorite one in the series. There's just like a lot of world building and leading up to the 3rd book. I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, but not my favorite. Then I read Cannibal by Stephanie Garber. I have to say I do really like Stephanie Garber's writing, but this book was very underwhelming. I can't tell you that I remember a single thing about this book, so I gave it 3 stars. Yeah, I do really like her writing, but that's about it. Then I read Lightlark. If you remember all the drama that happened in 2024 leading up to the release of this book, it's actually kind of insane. I will say though, this book is not half as bad as people were saying it was, but it also was not that memorable. I gave it 3 stars, 3.5 stars, because it was pretty entertaining, but I can't say that I'm like dying to know what happens in the 2nd book. I am pretty sure there might be some Kindle reads here somewhere that I can't remember right now, and I'm not going to look up. So I'm pretty sure I read a Not So Meet Cute, and then I read some arcs in there. we're not gonna talk about those, honestly. I can't remember, and I don't really feel like pulling up our Goodreads right now. So let's move on to my least favorite books of the year. So I read Looking for Alaska by John Green. I really didn't love this book. The writing was so odd, and it's about this boy who goes to this boarding school, and then he meets this girl named Alaska, and they have a back and forth relationship situation. I really don't remember much about this book. Pretty underwhelming. I gave it 3 stars. Then I continued the Addicted series by Kristen Becca Ritchie. I don't really like Lillian Lowe, so this was a 3-star for me. Then I read probably the spiciest book that Ali Hazel has ever written. It's called Night in Love. It's pretty similar to The Love Hypothesis, just like a lot spicier. I really didn't like this book. I'm so sorry. Then Reckless by Laura Roberts. This is the last book that we're gonna be talking about today. This actually, no, that's a lie. We're also gonna be talking about another book that's probably the lowest rated book in this entire situation. This was a 3 stars for me. I really didn't like this book. They were fighting about all kinds of stupid stuff in this book throughout the entire freaking book, and then they will like make up and then go back to fighting, and then she just kind of threw us a bone at the very end of the book where there's like this massive plot twist. Super underwhelming book, honestly. I feel like I expected a lot more for a sequel. I'm still going to read the 3rd book because of the plot twist at the end of this, but honestly, not my favorite. And then I read Done and Dusted. I read a cowboy romance. I just don't think cowboy romances are for me, so we won't be doing that again. I gave that book 2 stars. I'm sorry, that book was just nonsense with the book spice just thrown in to, I think, entertain us, but it was just so icky because the spice was just so random, and yeah, I really didn't like it. Just don't think I like cowboy romances. And that's it, I think, for all the books that I read in 2024. If you counted every single book that I mentioned here, I'm pretty sure you are noticing that I'm missing like quite a few books, but a lot of them were arcs and a lot of them were like not that memorable, so we just won't be talking about them. And that's all for 2024. That's literally all I read, and like I said, not the best reading year, but we did have some favorites in there, so I can't judge too harshly. But I will be trying to post on YouTube every week starting this week, so maybe hold me accountable to that. But yeah, those are all the books that I read in 2024. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to click the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Bye guys.